Let's measure the map and see if we can make out exactly where the steps do start. It may be, of course, that the measurements aren't correct and won't be of any help to us at all, but we can try. So they measured as best they could to try and find out in exactly what place the dungeon steps seemed to begin. It was impossible to tell, for the plans of the 3 floors seemed to be done in different scales. Julian stared at the map, puzzled. It seemed rather hopeless. Surely they wouldn't have to hunt all over the ground floor of the castle. That would take ages. Look, said George suddenly, putting a finger on the hole that they thought must have meant a representation of the well. The entrance to the dungeons seems to be not very far off the well. If only we could find the well, we could hunt around it a bit from the beginning of the dungeon steps. The well is shown on both maps. It seems to be somewhere around the middle of the castle. That's a good idea of yours, said Julian, pleased. Let's go out into the middle of the castle. We can more or less guess where the well ought to be, because it definitely seems to be about the middle of the old yard out there. Out they went into the sunshine. They felt very important and serious. It was marvellous to be looking for the lost ingots of gold. They all felt perfectly certain that there really were some beneath their feet. It didn't occur to any of the children that the treasure might not even be there. They stood in the ruined courtyard that had once been the centre of the castle. They paced out to the middle of the yard and stood there, looking around in vain for anything that might have perhaps been the opening of the old well. It was all so overgrown. Sand had blown in from the shore, and weeds and bushes of all kinds grew there. The stones that had once formed the floor of the big courtyard were now cracked and were no longer lying flat. Most of them were covered with sand and weeds.